Hello and welcome to another episode of Food for Thought. I'm your host, Faya, and this is the podcast where I take difficult topics and relate them to a food to make them less scary. And today's episode is about forgiving yourself in milk. I forgot, so I had to pause and then go check my notes app that I have all my ideas in. So forgiving yourself is like vital for life, kind of. I mean, one thing that I think about a lot is like mistakes that I make. But when I think about the mistakes that I make, I don't like hit my head or say, "Oh, you stupid." Or I don't think about something that I could have said to make it different. I think about what I did and I think about what I can do next time and I forget about it. And I forgive myself. And that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, sometimes I do like linger on my mistakes and you know, oh, if I didn't do this, or maybe if I wish I'd done like you didn't, but you didn't. And hey, I'm not one of those people who literally I hate those. Okay, I know the people who do this have good intention, but I hate it when people or when I say something and I'm like in another universe or like in another life or like I wish I had done this and they say, "Well, you didn't." Or like, "Well, we're in this universe. It didn't happen." I think those types of people need to relax. I think you just take a step back. Just calm down cuz why can't I like imagine things? Why can't I have an imagination? Why can't I like think about what could have been? Because yeah, you have to eventually accept that it didn't happen and things can't be different, but you're allowed to wish that they were. And a lot of people like move on too fast and just like moving on is a part of growing. And sometimes when you move on from something, but you still wish that there you had done something differently about it, you like feel bad. And it's okay to feel bad. I mean, every time that I every time that I do something that I know is probably not the greatest idea and it's a mistake, I just keep on going. Because, I mean, everybody makes mistakes. Mistakes are how you learn. Mistakes are how you grow. And I think that people need to give themselves a lot more grace than they think they need because life is rough, man. Life is really rough. And hey, maybe you could have been a different person. Like maybe something could have changed, but it didn't. And I'm not saying that to be like, yeah, well, it didn't happen, so you should just move on already because I don't believe in that. I don't believe just because something didn't turn out the way you wanted or didn't end up how you thought it would, you should just immediately move on and try to forget about it because hey, that's not how life works. You can't just forget about every bad thing that happens to you. And if you do, I'm pretty sure also that's not physically possible, but if you do, then what are you learning? Cuz you're just going to if you don't like think about what went wrong and how you could fix it next time, you're just going to keep repeating it over and over again. And I mean, I think just because you make a mistake once doesn't mean you're never going to make the same mistake again because some mistakes like maybe you accidentally left your plate too close to the edge of the counter and it fell on the ground and shattered. That's probably a mistake you're not going to make more than once. Next time you'll put it more on the countertop. But a mistake that could happen more than once is maybe you went for a guy who didn't have pure intentions, but how could you have known? How could you have known? And n- like something like that isn't your fault. Something like that, if the other person is like giving you this false persona and false image and false hope, It's not your fault that you fell for it. That was exactly their plan. Their goal was to get you to fall for it. And if you did, you're just like anyone else, and that's okay. And especially for kids, I think like the world pushes on to us that you need to learn and move on as quick as possible. If you get dumped, you have to find a new boyfriend. If you get a bad grade on a test, you have to just study harder for the next one. But you're allowed to like mourn. I think you should be allowed to grieve more than just like losses of relationships and family members. I think you should be allowed to grieve anything you want. I think you should be allowed to grieve the energy can drink you accidentally threw and missed in the trash can off a ski lift. And I think you should be able to mourn, the empty bottle of perfume that you had loved since you were 15. And I think you should be able to mourn, the backpack you had to give away. And I think you should be able to mourn your childhood stuffed animal that finally ripped. I think you should have to I think you should mourn anything you want to. And I mean, keeping your emotions down isn't going to make them go away. It's just going to suppress them. And if you keep doing that throughout your life, the more you suppress them, the more likely they are to come out in like random bursts. And then the people who like see you having these random bursts will think like, "Hey, like what is going on with them?" And then once the burst is over, you'll go back to normal and you won't like want to talk about it with them because you never learned how to talk about it because you bottled everything up. And I mean, I think that forgiving yourself is deeper than just allowing yourself to feel. I think it's also like recognizing that maybe it wasn't your fault and maybe you weren't the problem. Maybe you were, but maybe you weren't. And if you don't forgive yourself or you take too long to, then you're going to miss a lot of life lessons. Cuz learning to forgive yourself is learning. You learn, you cry and you learn, and forgiving yourself is like it's like realizing that you're going to be okay, cuz you are going to be okay. And you're going to learn and you're going to grow. And maybe you'll make the same mistake again. Maybe you'll make it 2 more times, 3 more times, 4 more times. Maybe you'll keep making it for the rest of your life. So fucking what? Who cares if I keep doing the same thing over and over again? It's my fucking life, not yours. And hey, maybe I don't have to learn immediately from my mistakes. Maybe I'm young and I want to make mistakes. Maybe not everything is that serious. Maybe mistakes are okay. I wish someone had told me when I was younger that it's okay to make mistakes. And I mean, they did, but they told me like in a different way. They told me if I screwed up on an art project, it was fine. They didn't tell me if I failed a test, it would be fine. They told me that if I accidentally fell, that I would be fine. They didn't tell me that if I accidentally dated an abusive person, it would be fine. Because a lot of older people don't assume that young people know emotion, which is kind of stupid because that's like all that we have. I'm quoting Billie Eilish. I'm really sorry. But I mean, it is pretty stupid to assume that young people don't know emotion. And because, to be fair, some people don't. There are some very emotionally immature people out there and kids. But, you're always going to meet kids and people who just have a way with regulating their emotions, and I think it's good to learn from them. because a lot of people, especially people who have a lot of pride, don't want to admit that they made a mistake and they just keep rolling with it. But the more you admit the mistakes that you make and you learn and you forgive yourself and you grow, the more human you are. Because if you never made a mistake, then okay, so you're a robot. So you're a robot? I think we need to normalize making mistakes more. I think we need to normalize getting the wrong order at a restaurant. And hey, maybe I don't have the guts to tell them. Hey, that's fine. Why? Like, it's fine. Like, just let me. And, like, eventually you are going to have to be able to say, like, hey, this isn't my order. But you don't always have to say that. Sometimes you're too scared. And that's okay. I mean, I think a lot of people just are scared to admit that not everything they do is perfect, which is a valid fear, honestly. But every time I think about a mistake that I make or something I did wrong, something I could have done better, and I'm beating myself up, I think about the little girl inside me, and I think she would not have fucking cared. This girl would not have cared if I got less than a 90 on an algebra summative. This girl would not have cared if I fell in my lacrosse game. Like, and every time I get scared to do something new, I think, well, that little girl wanted to do it and she couldn't, but you can. I do everything I do and forgive myself, and everything I do for myself, I do for the younger version of myself because she couldn't do it for herself. Everyone has a child inside them, and I think when you're forgiving yourself, you're forgiving that little version of you. And a lot of people hate the little version of them, which kind of doesn't really make sense because it's still you. And a person might say, I hated myself when I was younger, but you hated like the 4 foot tall version of you who couldn't do like 8 divided by 4? Like, really? Or did you just hate that you couldn't own up to your own mistakes? And honestly, if you can't own up to your own mistakes, whatever. You eventually will learn to, and that's okay. I think everyone should give themselves way more grace. Everyone should give themselves more time, more slack, more grace. Everyone is going through stuff. And, you might be facing problems, but so is everyone else. And just because your problems are different than theirs or theirs are different than yours, that doesn't make theirs or yours any less important. And a lot of people don't realize that. Now, milk. Milk is something that, sometimes tastes kind of gross. And thinking about it, why am I drinking like cow juice? Cow juice? Okay, I'm sorry, that's kind of gross. But, like after the first few sips, it's not that awful. And you know what it does? It makes you stronger. It makes your bones stronger. It makes your teeth stronger. It makes your like skull stronger. Hey, I want skull strength. And if I have to go through the first like few nasty sips to get like benefits for the rest of my life, why wouldn't I just drink the goddamn milk? And that's what forgiving yourself is. The first couple times, the first couple steps, it's bitter. It's not good. It's kind of gross. But as you keep doing it, it gets better. It gets easier. It might not always taste great, but it is working. And then eventually, it makes you stronger. And then that strength stays with you for the rest of your life. And the more milk you drink and the more mistakes you forgive yourself for, the stronger you will get. And I freaking stand by that. A song I've been listening to a lot is Tyler the Creator, like him. Fire song, fire album, fire artist. I literally can't explain in words how much I love that song. And I think it's a really good message. Well, it's kind of hard. I think I interpret it a lot differently than a lot of people. I kind of I know the point of the song is like, do I look like my dad? Do I look like my parents? Do I look like this person who has done wrong? In my mind, going back to what I said earlier, it's my childhood self. It's when I'm doing something I was scared to do when I was younger, when I'm facing a fear that she was scared of, when I'm walking to the bathroom at night with no flashlight, hello, she would be so proud. Do I look like her? I I like to think that's the way it's supposed to be interpreted. It's probably not. That's probably just me, but I really like to think of it that way because I mean your younger self is just it's just you but with less experience, you but more innocent. And I'm not going to act like I haven't done bad things since I was a kid, cuz then I would just be lying. But I've realized that with the doing of bad things and the doing of good things, they mix together and they make who you are. And obviously, you want to be more, have like good things. But if you were all just like good things, then you would like not be human. And I know I say that a lot, but hey, I'm right. Hey, I'm right. Hey, I'm right. Hey, I'm right. Hey, nobody is perfect. Hey, nobody is perfect. Goodness knows the wicked's lives are lonely. Goodness knows the wicked die alone. Can you tell I've been watching Wicked? I'm sorry, that was a little off track. Speaking of Wicked, oh, that was such a good movie. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Although I plot twist is all I have to say. That was really heartbreaking for me. Um anyway, back to track. You don't want to be all bad things or all good things. You want to be a mix of both cuz that makes you human. Cuz if you were all bad things, you would be awful. If you were all good things, you would be literally unreal. So you kind of want to be a mix of both, but more on the good side. And the only way you can make so many good decisions is by making bad ones and realizing they're bad. And realizing that maybe you shouldn't have done that, but you already did, so it's okay. And that's the thing going back, like, I don't like people who are like, well, it didn't happen while you're in this universe, well, you can't change it. You don't have to say it like that. I like to think of it instead as, well, it did happen and that's okay. Instead of, well, it didn't happen and you should just move on. Because nobody functions that way. Ever. Nobody just moves on directly after something happens. That's what freaking mourning is for. And people mourn differently. People mourn with less time and more time. But you don't just not mourn at all. And your mourning might look different than somebody else's mourning. Your mourning might look like laying in bed and crying and doom scrolling and rotting. Which, hey, that's okay. That is okay. I'm so sick of everyone acting like bed rotting is this awful, awful thing that, like, makes you a horrible human and makes you depressed and anxiety ridden. Because, hey, everybody needs a little bit of them time. Everybody needs a little bit of bed rotting time. And I will stand by that until the day I die. I don't like it when people just need to always be doing something to run away from their emotions. Sometimes I'll be laying in bed, doom scrolling, crying, feeling bad about myself as I should, as I feel, okay? And my mom will come in and tell me to get off my phone because it's worsening my mental health. And oh, maybe there's some truth to that, but I should be able to lie in bed and rot if I so feel like it. Because you don't have to move on directly after everything. Take time to mourn, forgive yourself for the things that you can't control, and then move on. And it might take months, it might take years, it might take decades, and you might never really move on. That's always a possibility. But you'll still have learned a lesson. And I think certain things are easier to move on from than others. I think love is hard to move on from. I think school is hard to move on from. I think family issues are hard to move on from. But it gets easier over time. It really does. And I'm not one of the people who's going to tell you time heals all, because it doesn't. It doesn't heal all. But it helps. It really does help. And it does heal some. Give yourself time. Give yourself space. Give yourself time. Forgive yourself for things that you can't control. Forgive yourself for things you can control. Forgive yourself for making mistakes like any human does. You are not stupid. You are not abnormal. You are human. I think that wraps up today's episode. This was Forgiving Yourself in Milk. I'm your host, Faya, and I'm out.